Hi, my name is Aaron, and this is my show, Reeducation, and capitalism is violence. It is inherently a violent system. It is oppressive to the people that live under it. Unless you are a capitalist, the rules have been set up in such a way that you are constantly having violence threatened upon you or physically done to you to uphold what the capitalists want. I'm going to explain how and why. Now, I got the idea for some of this video from a Jacobin article from 2017. So imagine that you are a passenger on a flight, and you have paid the fee to buy a ticket to be able to sit on that airplane and go to the destination that you wanted to go to. When, all of a sudden, you realize, as is so typically the case, that your flight had been overbooked. Overbooked to the point that they needed to kick people off of the airplane, and you happen to be the one that they want to kick off. Now, this was an incident that happened in 2017 where exactly this scenario went down. And the airplane business, I don't remember who it was, offered the passenger $800 to give up their seat so someone else could have their seat. And the passenger, needing to go to their destination, denied this $800 bribe and peacefully protested by staying in their seat and not moving so they could make the point that they did pay for that seat and that they should be allowed to enjoy the benefits of what they had paid for. But if you understand how capitalism works, this is something that is 100% illegal. So they had the police come in and violently, aggressively remove this person from the plane. They bloodied him up pretty good. They abused him and used violence to uphold property laws. You see, just because he paid for that seat did not mean that he had any sort of claim over that seat, that he had any kind of ownership of that airplane. The plane itself and the business and the airport and everything else was all privately owned. It was all owned by a private capitalist, making it private property. And you can't trespass on private property because that is illegal. And him sitting in that chair, even though he did pay for it, was an illegal act, so long as the capitalist wanted him to be gone. So they were completely in the legal right to abuse and bloody up this person and physically and violently remove them from that plane and give that chair to somebody else because they wanted to. But there are a few moral complications that I have with that. When you live in a system where you have homeless people sleeping in the doorway of a building rather than inside of that building itself because of the threat of police violence and brutality, that is a system that is violent. When you live in a system where people can't afford the amount of food that they need to survive, so they're forced to either steal it or die, and then they end up having the threat of force and violence committed upon them by the police again if they do that, then again, that is a system that is violent. And that is why you're not allowed to take home the product of your labor, that thing that you worked on for 8, 10, maybe even 12, 14 hours a day. Whatever you were working on at your job, building or creating, you're not allowed to take that home. Even though you poured your blood, sweat, and tears into it, because that isn't yours, that's privately owned. And if you do take that thing home, again, you are threatened by the force of violence and aggression by the state and by capitalism. Capitalism is violence. It has to use the violent, oppressive nature of the state, of the police force, to be able to uphold its arbitrary property laws. Those same laws that restrict people that are hungry and starving from being able to get the things that they need. Only in a system that is propped up by violence will you see a family that is starving and unable to feed its children, unable to buy milk, while at the same time a rich capitalist can buy as much milk as they need and feed it all to their cats. Only in a system of systemic violence will you see millions of homeless people sitting next to millions of empty houses. Only in a system that incentivizes systemic violence will you see 7 billion people that live on the earth, with 3 billion of them starving to death while making the equivalent of 10 billion people's worth of food. That is systemic capitalist violence. And only in a system like this do you see the reemergence of modern siege warfare. And I've explained this in the past. Siege warfare was basically when you have a group of people held up inside of a castle, and to kill those people inside of the castle, the invading army would just cut off their food supply. Very similar to the way that we handle our work industry today. If a capitalist wants to, they no longer have to force you to work for them by the fear of threat of violence from the police or at the end of a musket. They can do it by simply starving you out. Either you work for them or you starve. And as I stated in other videos, if you do anything to stand up for yourself, to stop this systemic problem, to be able to fight against this system, they have in place laws to make it illegal for you to do that. They are allowed to use force and use their authority to bludgeon and bloody you because you violated property laws, because you may have violated union laws, because you violated the laws that were put in place by the people who are trying to control you. So yes, capitalism is violence. It commits violent atrocities against you and your fellow comrades every single day. Don't you see that there's a really good reason why we should get rid of it? At least that's the way I look at it. My name is Aaron. This is my show, Reeducation. Thanks for watching.